Hello everyone, welcome to Desert Sage Podcast. I'm your host Greg Befford, coming to you on the 27th of August 2025 from the Alabama hills just outside of Lone Pine, California. Thank you for being here. We've stopped in Lone Pine, as I've mentioned in several of my previous podcasts, on our way up to Reno to visit our kids and grandkids. And this trip was exceptional in that we had our 14th grandchild. We went up for that. It was a healthy 8-pound, 9-ounce baby boy, little baby Tatum. And in addition to that, we got to see, grandkids, football games, and gymnastics events, and spend time with family. And that was the most important part, was being there for family. So that was our reason for going up this trip. And we stop in Lone Pine quite often. It's a quaint little place. Historically, there's some significance to it in that this is a old mining area. Was inhabited by the Paiute and Shoshone and Mono Indian tribes, and then it was used for filming westerns. The Alabama hills out here behind me, and Mount Whitney in particular, you can see in the background, is an area where they did a lot of old western shoots. It's known for that as well. The Manzanar relocation camp for the Japanese during World War II was one of the first relocation camps for Japanese American citizens and others who were interned illegally during World War II. I'll talk a little bit more about our history later, but this is a beautiful area. Mount Whitney is gorgeous. It's known for its hikes and things of that nature, but it's a beautiful mountain. It's the tallest mountain in the contiguous United States. So, in any case, it's been a while since I did the last walk and talk. I mentioned before that we had a window of opportunity to get projects done, and that's generally what we do during the winter time. The summertime is a little different for us. We try to get out of the heat from our home. It's generally 110, 115 degrees there. So we stop here. I wanted to talk about some of the more recent events, because it's mind-boggling to me the level of cognitive dissonance that people have, particularly Republicans, or people who claim to be Republicans, have Republican conservative values. Christians who claim to have, conservative values. And what's going on in the level of support that they have for not only Trump, but for Zionism, the evangelicals and the Christian Zionists. The mental gymnastics that they go through to support Trump and his behavior, when in any other instance, had it been Biden or Kamala Harris, had she got in there and did some of the things that Trump has done in terms of stifling free speech with his anti-Semitism bills and pushes, threatening to defund agencies that engage in BDS or boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. A multitude of things that he's done on behalf of Israel's interests and contrary to America's, including this prolonged war in Ukraine and the one in Israel right now, in the Middle East. He's done the exact opposite of what he has promised. Has not fulfilled any of those promises. And now he's deploying the military. And I mentioned this, I think, it was probably a year and a half ago in one of my walk and talks, shortly after October 7th. The phase that we're in now with communism, we've already gone through, I said, the destabilization phase.
the next couple years are going to be trigger events such as a third world war, such as another pandemic, such as an event that most people can't even wrap their heads around, that will cause enough chaos and disruption in this country to destabilize us to the point where our military will be turned against us. They'll be declaring martial law. We'll have a coup. And you know, it has the potential to get to that point.
When it comes to deploying the National Guard and the military, he's talked about deploying and has deployed the military on our streets. So this is getting beyond the pale, and yet I see these posts on social media of conservative Christian Republicans cheering on and claiming wins for some of these actions. Again, totally hypocritical. Had this been Biden or a Democrat that was doing the things that Trump is doing now, there'd be riots in the streets. And yet there's not. Yeah, and yet there's not. Why is that? A lot of people are just apathetic. They don't care about what's going on. Their only circle of concern involves what's going on in their little tiny world. And I understand that to some degree. I really do. When I talk to people about a lot of these things, I get blank looks on their faces, and a lot of people just don't have the time or the energy to stay up with geopolitical issues or politics in general and what's happening in the world outside of their little bubble. And a lot of it's because there are many people that are just in survival mode. It's all you can do, to work one or several jobs to stay afloat and keep your head above water just to survive. And then you come home and you're exhausted. And if you have a family and you have kids, I get it. I understand. I really do. But what's the excuse of the people my age, the boomer generation? I was born in '60. Makes me a boomer. What's the excuse for the people that are retired now or have been retired or don't have to work or have the ability to do what I do, which is a lot of research? I study. I'm a continuous student of life. I didn't stop when I got my master's degree. I'm a lifelong learner. And I use the internet. But people my generation or older, they are so brainwashed by the television. They get their news from mainstream media. They don't know or won't research the internet, use the internet, Alexandria's library, as I like to refer to it as, to do research, real research. Scrolling through your Facebook posts is not internet research, folks. It's not. Learn how to use it. It's a tool. It's a tool. So a lot of this goes to where you get your information from. I've posted and I've talked before about the methods of manipulation and how people have been indoctrinated and brainwashed to believe the false belief in authority, statism. All the methods of manipulation that they use to control your perception is perception management for behavioral control. And I've talked a lot about that. And yet, you can provide people all the evidence in the world. And that's what I do. I look for evidence. And if the evidence points me in another direction, I'll follow it. That's what doing research and having an open mind and using your critical thinking skills is all about. Using the Trivium method. Knowledge, understanding, wisdom, input, processing, output. It's garbage in, garbage out. If the only information you're getting is from mainstream media and has been your whole life, or from the television, You have been programmed. I talked before about, Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, nephew of Sigmund Freud. Look at some of his quotes about the human mind and controlling the masses. They have used all means of media, whether it's newspaper, print, radio, television, now the internet with social media platforms. And don't think that these social media influencers aren't being used and paid handsomely to spread propaganda, whether it's right-wing, left-wing. The right-wing influencers, your Charlie Kirks, your Ben Shapiro's, your rabid Zionists, because the Zionists control the media. The Zionist Jewish power influence in this country owns the media. All forms of it, including publishing. And again, you don't have to believe me. And it's not anti-Semitic to point this out. I've mentioned many, many times how that term is being used and weaponized. Look up the meaning. It's a vague term by the IHRA. It's subjective. It's based on a perception, which means it's subjective. It's subject to interpretation. We'll make it up as we go. Just like anti-Semitic, it's a made-up bullshit term. And it's used to stifle free speech or any criticism of Jews or Israel, because they conflate the two. They use a lot of conflation and projection. So, look, do the research, read books, turn the damn TV off. We have a TV in our home. There are occasions when I will switch and I will watch mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, just to see what it is they're pimping, what they're pushing, what the narrative is, how they're trying to frame it. But if that's where you're getting your primary source of information, you are brainwashed. Whether you want to admit it or not, your ideas, your values, your opinions, your feelings, your thoughts are all being manipulated. Whether you want to admit it or not. I really don't give a shit. Do some research. Go look at the Ash experiment. Go look at, the Stanford Prison experiment. All the Milgram experiment, all the ones that I've talked about in my podcasts. They've been doing this for a long time. This priest class, these master, magicians, they know how the human psyche works, and they use it to control the masses. To control your perceptions. That's the reality. And if you don't understand that, you're in a game that you don't even know is being played. So, the other thing I want to talk about is how they use identity. And they hijack identity in a variety of ways. On many occasions, I talked about how important it is to know yourself. At some point in your life, to start asking the existential questions. Why am I here? What purpose is there to life? Is there a God? Is all this real, or is this just a simulation that we're going through, a test? At some point, you need to start asking those questions. And when you do, when you seek the truth and you ask the universe for answers, it'll come to you. The answers will come to you. But you got to still your mind. And I've recommended meditation many, many times to people. You've got to be able to still your mind. You have to be able to listen with a different set of ears. You've got to be able to see with a different set of eyes. You know, we are so limited in our perception of reality. We can only see so far in the light spectrum. We can only hear so much, you know, smell. Animals outdo us, you know, tenfold in many of these areas, thousandfold in some. But ours is limited. And people believe that the reality is the only thing that they can see in front of them. You know, it's a 3D deception, and that there's a lot more to reality than what is in front of us. There's a lot more to us than this physical skin suit that we've been given. And that's the point I'm trying to get to. You got to know yourself. When you start asking some of these questions, you'll come to the reality of who you are, the essence of who you are. And we're souls, in essence. We're divine beings, have been given physical bodies. And that's my understanding of the reality, is that we incarnate deliberately in most cases, although you don't remember, but you had a choice to incarnate, and you had a purpose for coming here. Now, I know that sounds, you know, odd, bizarre, and your challenge in life is to understand that purpose and to know the essence of who you are. I'm not this body. I'm not this body. I'm a spark of divine consciousness. We're electrical and electromagnetic beings in physical bodies. And we have a soul, we have a conscience. And a lot of people will ignore that conscience, such as those who claim to be Christians who are watching the Holocaust take place in Gaza right now and will deny it. Will deny it. Israel isn't the Holy Land. It's secular. It's not the biblical Israel. They conflate this stuff. And yet, your religion and the false teachers have taught you to believe that Israel, the biblical Israel, is now the secular nation state of Israel.
Suggested it was a strange thing that I said a minute ago, that when I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. And what you didn't ask is why. So let me tell you why.
No, you said I was obsessed with Israel, and you had just told me that, like, your driving motive to get to the Senate was to defend Israel. I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel.
Okay.
I don't even think about Israel.
Tucker, words matter.
Uh-huh.
And you know that. I said I resolved to be the leading defender of Israel, and you said your driving motive, the reason you're in the Senate.
You want to be the leading defender of Israel. I would think if I ran for Senate, I'd be like, there are people dying of drug ODs on the street.
My driving motive is to fight for Texas and America, and to fight for jobs, and to fight for the Constitution. And you played a very, very careful word game of a lie to you.
You're the one who said it, not me.
So you still haven't asked why, but I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian, growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the.
It's in Genesis, but so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology. I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker,
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
Hold
on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel. Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected.
He's the prime minister.
Right.
What?
But just like, America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle
This is
there.
silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
You believe
Israel.
that's what God was talking about in
Yes.
Genesis.
I do, but
That country's existed since when?
for thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is. So I don't know if we can.
I don't remember the scriptural citation, but okay, I keep.
It's like Genesis 16 or something like that. But yes, it's in the earlier part of the book. But the point is,
all right, Tucker, you keep interrupting me before I finish my
it's just
sentence.
important to know what you're talking about. I don't know what so you're saying as a Christian, if I believe in Jesus, I have to support the modern state of Israel?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm explaining for me what my motivation is.
And no amount of evidence will convince you otherwise. You're blind to it. Your conscience, which is hardwired into our hearts, the Creator put it in every one of His sentient beings, is your understanding of right and wrong. Your innate, built-in, hardwired understanding of right and wrong. And over time, you ignore that. And you do it long enough, and you become a psychopath, a sadist, a Satanist, the worship of the self. Again. And this world is run by Satanists and pedophiles at the very top up there, and they cover for them.
I call it the Epstein hoax.
Donald Trump is turning on a fractured MAGA movement.
It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net.
The president accusing what he's called his past supporters of buying into bull, hook, line and sinker. He also described them as weaklings, arguing he doesn't want their support anymore.
The sad part is it's people that are really doing the Democrats' work. They're stupid people.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein died in a prison cell in 2019 while facing sex trafficking charges. Skepticism and conspiracies about his death and a possible client list were amplified by Donald Trump's allies and appointees.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are.
But when the Trump administration reaffirmed that Epstein died by suicide and concluded there was no such client list, it angered many of the president's high-profile backers.
That is, I think, what is enraging people right now is it's insulting our intelligence. Like, obviously, the intelligence community is trying to cover it up.
They've got videotape, and all of a sudden they don't. Kash Patel said there's nothing you're looking for. Oh, okay.
Since Donald Trump retook office, no issue has rocked his MAGA coalition quite like this one. To put it simply, many of his supporters don't believe what the White House is telling them. The president prides himself on his ability to deflect issues he doesn't want to talk about, but it looks like this issue isn't going away. The president is standing by his team for now.
If your Attorney General wasn't here, your FBI leadership, do you still have confidence in that team, sir?
Total.
As a MAGA meltdown unfolds around him. Cameron Gock, ABC News, Washington.
You know, this Epstein thing, although it involves a lot more than, child molestation and human trafficking, it goes much deeper than that. We're, gun running, these are, money laundering, all kinds of, things. So, and to have our government cover run cover for that because the president is most likely implicated in some way, or he's covering for those people his donor class that he's trying to protect. And if this comes out, it'll become readily apparent to most people what our government is actually capable of, including our intelligence and military. The brutalness. Right now, people, and they will turn a blind eye to our government support for bombing and killing innocent civilians. You ignore your conscience. You know that, right from wrong. You know that is not moral warfare. The Israelis have their own understanding of morality, and the Jewish people running that country have their own understanding of morality. And I've shown what it is. They'll admit it. They come out and admit it. They treat the Palestinians as Amalek. You kill women, children, it doesn't matter. They don't differentiate.
Remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember, and we are fighting our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza and in all other regions in Israel are joining this chain of Jewish heroes, a chain that has started 3,000 years ago from Joshua ben Nun until the heroes of 1948, the Six-Day War, the 73 October War, and all other wars in this country. Our hero troops, they have one supreme main goal: to completely defeat the murderous enemy and to guarantee our existence in this country. We've always said, never again. Never again is now.
And then they hide behind Hamas. Hamas has been in every single building that they have demolished, using Palestinians as human shields. Those are talking points, and they're masterful at it. Yet, because of Christian Zionist hard and fast beliefs, they'll turn a blind eye to the reality of what's happening, and they'll make excuses for Trump and for the Israeli government and Israeli citizens who, by a large part, condone and endorse what's happening there. Yes, there are pockets of Israeli Jews and citizens, Arab Israelis, that stand up against this stuff. But the reality is that the majority, including the settlers who are occupying West Bank and driving people out of their homes, they believe that they are chosen, that land is theirs, biblically, it was given to them. And it doesn't matter what you believe. That's what they believe. That's been driven into their heads since they were children. And yet they'll claim that it's Hamas children, that, Palestinian children that are indoctrinated to hate Jews. I'll show you video clips of Israeli children in classrooms and what they're taught.
Ask yourself, how does someone react to genocide like this?
With your babies here.
The answer is they've been conditioned to, and it starts in their education system. Here are 3 examples of how Israel teaches the dehumanization of Palestinians. According to this Israeli professor's research, Israeli textbooks show Palestinians, or Arabs as they're called, as caricatures of primitive farmers, hordes of refugees, or they're masked and painted as terrorists.
You cannot find one photograph of a human being who is a Palestinian.
And it might explain how you end up with videos like this.
We need to kill Arabs.
The way they are represented are as the problems and threats. And since they never or hardly ever meet Palestinians face to face or speak to them, although they may live 50 to 100 meters from them, this is what they know.
If you type map of Israel in Hebrew into Google, this is what you'll get. Notice how a lot of these maps have no clear markings showing the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, all of which are internationally recognized as illegally occupied Palestinian territories. You'll also find this map in Israeli textbooks. It's how you end up with illegal settlers colonizing more and more Palestinian land, claiming it's their God-given right.
This, all this, what you say, it's belong to Israel.
And it's how you end up with scenes like this.
You have this necklace?
That's Palestine, yeah.
This is Israel. Students in Israel are taught about the Holocaust starting in nursery school all the way to the 12th grade. Part of that learning is looking at horrifying images, or exercises that encourage students to put themselves in the shoes of the victims and relate to the experience. The identification of students with the victims isn't a coincidence. It's an intentional policy by the Israeli Ministry of Education. It's how you end up with a society where, according to one Israeli professor, every Jewish Israeli citizen is a Holocaust survivor or a potential victim of future Holocaust-like events.
The goal is traumatization and revenge, and not to let the fire of vengeance die out. However, this vengeance is not directed towards the German persecutors and their collaborators in Europe, but towards Palestinian colonized subjects who are Nazified.
The fact that Palestinians had nothing to do with the Holocaust and that they are the ones currently being exterminated seems to be irrelevant. With this weaponization of the Holocaust, Zionism isn't seen for the settler colonial racist ideology that it is, but as the savior of the Jewish people. And it's this thinking and this fear that is weaponized to justify the violence of the Zionist state. That it must exist and do whatever is necessary to defend itself so that another Holocaust would never happen again. That's how you end up with videos like this.
It is a terrorist organization which murders Jews because they're Jews.
Once the Jewish people were defenseless, no longer.
So why does this matter? Israelis spent 12 years in this education system, teaching them to dehumanize Palestinians and see them as people looking to eliminate Jews, not an oppressed, colonized people looking for freedom. And once they graduate, most Jewish Israelis will go straight to the military to do their 2 to 3 years of mandatory service, where they become the front lines of apartheid and occupation. That's how we end up with videos like this. So why do all this? Well, Israel can only exist as a Jewish state if it manages demographics to maintain a Jewish majority. And it does so by displacing, imprisoning, and murdering Palestinians routinely. And the only way to get Jews to participate in this is by convincing them that it's the only way for them to exist safely. Seeing Palestinians as people who want to live in peace and be free doesn't fit into that plan.
From a young age. You know, this identity, this Jewish identity, which, again, I wanted to get into identity and how it's been hijacked. The Jews that currently run the Israeli government, most of the cabinet there are Ashkenazi Jews. They're Eastern European Jews. There's no Semitic blood in them. If you want to use that term Semitic to refer to Arabs and Palestinians and those people that lived in that region and spoke that language, the Semitic languages during that time. Look, they have hijacked the Jewish identity, the biblical Jewish identity. And the Zionists have done this. But even before the Zionists, you have to remember that this issue of what is a Jew goes back even much further than that. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but when I'm talking about identity, not just the Jewish identity, which leads to the Jewish question, which nobody seems to ever want to talk about or ask about, except more and more people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and some of these other, Alex Jones and some of these other podcasters and influencers are starting now. You can't avoid it anymore. The world is witnessing a genocide, an ethnic cleansing, the Holocaust in real time on 4K. So people are noticing. So it's about time that the Jewish question was asked, and that includes the control over our government. We are losing and have lost our sovereignty, our national sovereignty and our individual sovereignty to a foreign secular nation state. And our congressmen and leaders of the free world here have been captured. They've been bribed, blackmailed, brainwashed. Or run out of office. So when it comes to your identity, your individual identity, how do they divide us? Generally, it's identity politics. It's Republican, Democrat. It's by race. Race is a big one. Race is a big one. You know, and whether you again believe it's a human construct or not, obviously there are haplotypes and phenotypes, differences between us, variations in us as humans, but basically we are the same. They divide us by religion, politics, generations, old versus young. You see generational wars going on now, by sex, men versus women. Then they divide the sexes, you know, with the transgenderism and all the other isms. They divide us because you're attached to what you believe is your identity, your true identity, your true self. And when somebody attacks the Republican Party or, you know, Christian Zionism, you have so thoroughly fused your identity with the Republican Party or Christian Zionism that is a threat to you. That becomes a threat to you. And you're automatically on the defensive and are resistive to hearing anything that anybody has to say that might be critical or might question the ideology or your true beliefs. I challenge people, is this what you truly believe? You know, what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to be a Christian? And I'll get all kinds of responses. Well, it means they'll cite the Nicene Creed or, I believe in, Jesus, Christ, who my Lord and Savior, you died on the cross for my sins. You'll hear that. That's what it means. I follow Christ. Again, I've said this many times. Christ, whether you believe in him as a historical figure or the mythical Christ or not, that he never created a religion. There's no evidence to support that. He didn't say, worship me. He didn't say, believe in me or perish. No. He was the way. He was showing the way. He represented truth. He was Logos incarnate. And for those of you that don't know that term, Logos has a variety of different meanings, but Logos means primarily the order of the universe. And the Jews at the time rejected Christ, who also represented truth. They rejected the order of the universe. Logos, reason. Common sense. And a path to freedom. That was Christ's message. Freedom from slavery. Whether it's physical slavery and the Egyptians or the Romans, or it's psychological slavery from the priest class, or free from the slavery of money, because most people, myself included, are debt slaves. We take out mortgages. Look up that term. Break that term down and find out what it means. They understand how to divide you by identity. They create the division, the hatred, the bigotry towards Muslims, particularly now, trying to restoke, the 9/11, Muslim fear, the enemy. And I'm not saying that there aren't radical branches of Islam. There are, and a lot of them are supported by the United States intelligence agencies and by the Mossad, by Israel, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which was the Mujahideen, in the 70s, when we went over and supported them when Russia invaded Afghanistan. So a lot of these are same players, different names. They just transformed into something, just like these once were never Trumpers, all of a sudden transmuted into your J.D. Vances and your Marco Rubios, and there's a transmutation that takes place there.
Donald Trump to a third world dictator yesterday in an interview with the New York Times. How so?
Well, I don't know about a dictator. I said a third world strongman. He's running for president, so no matter what, he won't be a dictator unless our republic completely crumbles, which I don't anticipate it will. But yeah, here's what happens in many countries around the world. You have a leader that emerges and basically says, don't put your faith in yourselves, don't put your faith in society, put your faith in me. I'm a strong leader, and I'm going to make things better all by myself. This is very typical. You see it in the third world. You see it a lot in Latin America for decades. It's basically the argument he's making that he single-handedly is going to turn the country around. We've never been that kind of country. We have a president. The president is an American citizen who serves for a period of time, constrained by the constitutions and the powers vested in that office. The president works for the people, not the people for the president. And if you listen to the way he describes himself and what he's going to do, he's going to single-handedly do this and do that without regard for whether it's legal or not. Look, I think people are going to have to make up their mind. I can tell you this, no matter what happens in this election, for years to come, there are many people on the right, in the media, and voters at large that are going to be having to explain and justify how they fell into this trap of supporting Donald Trump, because this is not going to end well one way or the other.
They all of a sudden their ideology changes and they realize they need to get on the other team now. And look, it's theater. It's theater. But you identify with it. Trump used Cambridge Analytica talking points He knew what people wanted to hear, and he told you what he wanted to hear. You fused your identity with him, with Trump. That's the personality. You thought that's, he stood for all the things that he said. He's an actor. It's theater. And you should understand that now. He works for his paymasters, just like all of them do. That is the reality. But if you have all these biases and filters in front of you, you can't see reality, or nor will you choose to, no matter what evidence is put in front of you. Because that's who you've become. You've so strongly identified with that. No amount of convincing will do. And that's not my job. My job is not to wake people up. I can't do that. All I can do is put information out there. It's up to you to decide whether or not you choose to listen to it or not, or choose to pursue it. And I've cautioned you against being left brain too over skeptical, or right brain too over, naive. Having an open mind means neither rejecting nor accepting either, but being open to the possibility of both, but then using your own critical thinking and analytical skills to discover the truth. Once you input the information, you weigh it against what you know to be true and the evidence. And then the output, hopefully, is something closer to truth. And look, I don't have all the answers. I've said that many, many times. I'm in pursuit of the truth, and I'm a defender of the truth. And we live in a sea of lies. And people have no discernment. They've lost their ability to discern. They've lost their care. A lot of what's driving the inability of people or the refusal of people to speak up about the atrocities that are going on here now. One, obviously, they don't want to be ostracized by their friends. They don't want to be called an anti-Semite or a bigot or, a Jew hater. They don't want to be called any of those. They don't want to risk their job or their livelihood or their friends or their family. All of those reasons. I understand. I get that. I understand that. I understand it. At this time of my life, I can't accept it as it's not acceptable to me any longer, because there is no future. There is no future for your kids or your grandkids. And that's really why I'm up here, trying to do what I can, to help push back against what I see is coming. What I see is coming. And that's a totalitarian, technocratic surveillance state, just like Orwell's 1984 and Brave New World. You can see it unfolding under the guise of security, safety, convenience. We're watching them build a digital prison around us. Satellite surveillance. There'll be nowhere to hide. Nowhere to hide. Surveillance in every device you can imagine. Cameras everywhere. Including, out in my community. Our board attempted to put a surveillance system, a flock surveillance system. Attempted to put it out at the entrances and ingress and egress to our ranch. And it didn't take any time at all to find out that Flock is a subsidiary of and was founded by Palantir's Peter Thiel. So automatically there's a back door in there for government surveillance. And regardless of what they tell you in terms of your control of data, we knew that wasn't the case, and that project got rejected by pushback by the owners that were aware and were willing to do the research And that's what you need to do. That's what I'm encouraging you to do, is to use your critical thinking skills. I've attempted to use, the primary methods of influence to try to get people to understand your mind is really the target. Your mind and your soul are really the targets for the people that are really running things. Capture of your mind, which means that they can control, and if they can control your emotions, your mind and your emotions, they can control your behavior. So if you understand these things, if I can influence you enough to do the research on how this works, how they use the media and money and religion and finance and all these systems of control, education, all these methods of manipulation. And believe me, they have thousands. They have think tanks that in our intelligence agencies specifically, that all they do is study social behavior of different ethnic groups, of different regions. They understand intricately how their religion influences their culture, language, media, all of these things influence culture. And we're in a culture war as well. This is a spiritual war. It's a culture war. It's a war for your mind. It is asymmetric in nature. They're coming at you with all, whether it's poison through the shots, through the food, through the air, the water we drink, which is fluoridated. Well, they might make, half-ass attempts to remove fluoride from the water, but you're not going to see it happen. So whether they're chemically poisoning you or dumbing you down, or trying to outright kill you, which was the case with the mRNA injections, you're complicit in your own demise if you allow this to happen without questioning things. And that's the thing, is at least question. Nobody wants to question anything. They just blindly follow along. And that applies with religion, government, and the belief in authority that someone smarter, richer, more famous should be calling the shots. Well, how's that worked out for us? Trump has a big part of his cabinet consists of, former media hosts, television personalities. Fox News hosts Hexus running the Department of Defense, the Pentagon. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's sad. It's sad what our country has become. It is not what it was designed to be. It's sad. We were supposed to be a republic, not an empire. Not an empire. And like all empires, we're in decline. Whether you want to admit it or not, wave your flag all day long, burn your flag, I don't care. Which is another First Amendment violation that Trump thinks he has the authority to dictate, mandate. And I hear a lot of my Republican Christian friends say, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for any of this. Well, yeah, you did. If you voted, yeah, you did. Yes, you did. And this, again, this idea of voting for the lesser of two evils. How much lesser of evil would it have been if Kamala or Biden been elected and we're doing what Trump's doing now? Much lesser evil? Much greater evil than what Trump is doing now? Look, The argument that the lesser of two evils is actually a good is a logical fallacy. You cannot turn a bad into a good, a wrong into a right. And a lot of my friends have buyer's remorse now, and and this isn't an I told you so moment. I don't want it to be that. There's enough division as it is now, and they stoke that. They stoke that division. And you might ask, well, what is it going to take? Well, what you don't want. This fake Republican Democrat, two wings of the same bird thing is what you don't want. And Gen Zers, I got to give them credit. A lot of them are waking up to this bullshit. Stuff that my generation should have woken up to 10, 20 years ago. That we were being lied to and manipulated into every war, every conflict on behalf of the tiny secular nation state of Israel. And should have started asking questions, why is that? Why is our Congress owned by AIPAC and has been for years, and the influence of the ADL over censorship and all these other things? Why didn't we ask those questions? We were busy in our own little worlds. And again, I can't fault people. People are on their own journey. Everybody's on their own journey. We're all at different levels of awakening, if you want to call it that, or of awareness, a higher level of consciousness, whatever. The veil's been lifted. The curtain's been pulled back. And we can see the reality through another set of eyes, another set of ears to hear. And we're speaking truth to the lies. Whether it's with COVID-19 or with this conflict in Israel and in Ukraine. It's time to end the lies. It's time to speak the truth in whatever way that you can. And not everybody can, get up and speak in public or do podcasts. I understand that. But once you know the truth, you have a moral obligation to speak it. And that's really the dilemma of our lifetimes right now, is the moral dilemma. The moral dilemma. And it's being put right in front of... They're normalizing the genocide of children. The most innocent amongst us. Killing them. The innocents. Whether it's women, men, or primarily children. And justifying it, trying to justify it. This is a fake, this child actually had some kind of genetic illness or injury, which is why we're starving it. It's not, this wasn't from, starvation. This was from a genetic, and people post that stuff as justification. See, this is just Hamas propaganda. Yeah, like Hamas has a big propaganda wing in our country. Yeah, it's the Hamas. The Palestinians have, the Arabs have a huge influence on Congress and on our media and on academia. Quit lying to yourselves. Quit lying to yourselves. And face the moral question. This is the moral dilemma that we're facing. Gaza and Palestine is the moral question of our time. And once you see what is actually happening there, and you understand the Greater Israel Project and Zionism and how far back this goes, and the plan, to divide the Middle East and our wars there and our involvement. Once you understand all of that, you have an obligation. You can't unsee it, and you have a moral obligation to speak the truth in any way that you can. And those that are retired military and law enforcement, those that were warriors, you know what a warrior does? A true warrior protects the innocent. women and children, first and foremost. And whether it's yours or anybody else's, you can't turn a blind eye to what's happening in the Middle East and to what's happening in our country as a result of what's now Zionism. Again, it changes names, it transmutes form from generation to generation, whether it's, Bolshevism, or communism, Nazism, Zionism, same thing, same beast, different form. It's going to end up in a slaughter of millions if we don't put a stop to it, if we don't unite. If we can't unite under this atrocity, if we can't come together as a species, well, maybe we, deserve to be wiped off the face of the earth. The universe is only going to tolerate so much of this, and there will be the effect to the cause, and it won't be pleasant for humanity. It won't be pleasant for Americans. Those that, it's on the other side of the world, it's not my kids, so this apathetic attitude, ignorance, apathy, and cowardice. Scarecrow, the Tin Man and the Lion. Same story, same allegory throughout time. Nothing's changed. We're watching history repeat itself. And the question now is, do you have the courage to challenge your beliefs, whether they be religious or political, and the principles that you stand for? What are those principles? Do you value human life? Do you believe in the murder of innocents? Do you believe that pedophiles should be arrested and then released to go to Israel to be protected? Because that's what the Trump administration recently did. Then tried to blame it on the local law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, and judges. They allowed this person to flee back to Israel. So connect the dots. Connect the dots. And that's all this is, consciousness is the pattern recognition. It's the ability to connect the dots, so that you have a clear understanding of the mosaic, the picture of the puzzle, once all the pieces are in place. If the pieces don't fit, don't try to make them fit because of your religious or political beliefs or zealotry. Understand the truth, and speak the truth. This identity thing, know who you are. It's back to Sun Tzu, and I talked before about this. If you don't understand who the enemy is, this evil that is, manifested itself in our government and the corruption and the murder and the, pedophilia and all the child trafficking and human trafficking, all the things that society would rather turn a blind eye to, be ignorant of, and the causes. We're going to suffer the consequences of our ignorance and our apathy and our cowardice. So if you're in this, and I'm not trying to blackpill people. I'm optimistic. I believe that we can turn things around in this country. It is possible. And it doesn't take a majority. It doesn't take 51%. It takes a small number of people, much smaller than you would imagine, to start that momentum and to shift the tide, shift that Overton window. And that's what's happening now. I see it. I see more and more people now willing to challenge their beliefs, dumping the Republican Party, dumping the Democrat Party, looking for other solutions. And they're not political. They're not. It starts with you personally, and then again, those concentric circles, your family, your community, your city, your county, your state. It starts there. It's going to have to be grassroots from the ground up. But it starts with you. It starts with you. Quit looking outside of yourself for some savior, some hero, some political party to come rescue you. You know, either you have Christ consciousness in you and you strive for that, or you're simply a fake Christian. And most people will have no idea what I'm talking about with Christ consciousness. Again, I'm not religious. I grew up, you know, studying the Lutheran faith, 8 years of parochial school, you know, a lot of the Christian doctrines and whatnot, until I challenged a lot of those beliefs. And, you know, and that's taboo. You're not allowed to do that. You know, religion, although it does have its good aspects in terms of moral lessons and things of that nature, has been hijacked too. Just like your identity, you know, it's been hijacked. What does it mean to be an American now? What does it mean? Or to be a Christian, or be a Republican, or conservative? These are all fake titles. I mean, what do they mean? Being Christian, to me, is a way of being in the world. Being satanic is a way of being in the world. It's where your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions align with Christ's consciousness, with his purpose, the reason he was sent here. And it was to free humanity from slavery, from physical slavery, from psychological, spiritual slavery. That was the purpose for his incarnation. And like many of the other prophets throughout time, we ended up killing them. We rejected the message. We rejected truth. We'd rather see Barabbas, you know, the murderer, freed and amongst us than the truth. That's too painful. Anyway, I wanted to touch on identity. I wanted to touch on some of the recent things that were happening, catch up to speed on what's been going on in my world, and I'll try to make these a little more often when I can, but this one was important to get out. I see, you know, I use social media as a tool, help promote my content, to influence people. And I argue with people. There are times, you know, when I tell people who are friends and relatives, look, if you in any way continue to support what's going on here in Gaza and justifying the genocide that's occurring here, you might just as well unblock or unfriend me now, because I'm not going to make it pleasant for you. I'm going to push back against the lies. I don't care, you know, what it does to our relationship. I'm sorry if you know, you can't be open to and not be polarized and politicized, you know, or such a religious zealot that you can't be open to somebody who's not any of those things. And I don't identify as any of those things. So, in any case, I'm going to let this go for now. Thank you for your time and your attention. I appreciate it. Take care, and we hope to talk to you soon. Peace, love, freedom.